Joyful blessings. This is Kaylin Castell. Super excited to share with you about a very fun full moon about to happen on November 27th. It's an out of bounds full moon. I'll explain more about what that means in a moment. And it's in the magical crazy wisdom of Gemini. We're going to explore crazy wisdom. We're going to explore so many things, including the sacred hoop of stars, Sedna, prophecies from white buffalo calf women, and black elk. It is a remarkable, amazing time for us to be tuned into what these energies are about. So I thought I'd start with a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, who was a science fiction writer. He was also a science writer, a futurist, an inventor, an undersea explorer, and he co-wrote the screenplay for the 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey, that was regarded as one of the most influential films of all time. And he says, magic is just science we don't understand yet. And that's something for us to keep in mind. And it's a way of expanding our perspective around what magic really is, and that we can all do magic. And we're going to explore how we can do magic as we go through this. So this Gemini full moon is exact on November 27th. It'll be at 1:16 a.m. Pacific time, 4:16 a.m. Eastern time, 2:16 a.m. in Tucson, Arizona, where I am, and Mountain time. And it's going to be remarkable in that it's also squared by Saturn. So here we have the moon at 5 degrees, almost 5 degrees Gemini, and the sun at almost 5 degrees Sagittarius. We have Mars at 2 degrees Sagittarius, and Saturn at 0, almost 1 degree Pisces. And it's in square to the sun and the moon and Mars. And we could imagine Saturn is often seen as limitations and rules and boundaries and the challenges of our judgments and the things that we encounter that way. But it's only because that's how we look at it. If we looked at Saturn as helping us to create a new structure, a new form, a new way of being, we could imagine that this full moon, Saturn is assisting us in creating more fun, more play, more expansive ways of perceiving what's going on in our reality that are playful and fun and outside the old rules of the old boundaries that we have been plagued with in this culture for way too long. So if we consider that the moon is wildly outside the boundaries of everyday reality and emphasizing the Gemini gift of crazy wisdom, and crazy wisdom from the Tibetan Buddhist perspective challenges the stereotypical image of holiness through contradictory behavior. So this is when someone does something completely what you don't expect. They say something or do something that just, it's like, it makes you take a pause and go, oh, wait a second, what just happened? So, and the reason for this is that it removes the sense of what holiness is supposed to look like by emphasizing the unexpected and using humor to remind us not to take ourselves so seriously. And that is what Gemini is all about: more fun, more play, and being able to see things from a more humorous point of view. So this quote, the more wisdom you attain and the more conscious you become, the crazier you will appear to others. So that really fits into the whole idea of crazy wisdom. Charles Cooley said, I'm not who you think I am not who I think I am who I think you think I am. And this is a brilliant crazy wisdom quote because oftentimes we don't even necessarily realize that we might be perceiving ourselves as what, based on how we think other people think about us. And that's not even a reality. It might not even be what they're thinking about us. This is what we are thinking they're thinking about us. So how do we bring it back to ourselves and recognize that whatever we're thinking other people think doesn't even matter? It's like, who are we really? And how do we get to the core essence of that within ourselves and not worry about what anything external, but come from the inside out? William Blake said, if the fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. So these are some examples of crazy wisdom perspectives that can support us through this time of this full moon. So now here we have the full moon on rising on November 26th at around 7 p.m. It's already up. So it's rising earlier, much earlier. It's already pretty high in the sky. It's with the Pleiades that mark 0 Gemini. Also, a couple of the stars are still around 29 Taurus. And Sedna is also right here. it's been back and forth over this. It's going back and forth over this 0 Gemini 29 degrees Taurus point. And we'll talk about that much more in a moment. So to tune into the full moon, it's going to be the fullest rise of the moon on the night of the 26th. And I will put in a link if you want to find out what time the moon is rising for you in your area. I'll put a link in where you can put that information in and find out. Of course, a lot of it depends on your horizon line, because if you have mountains, it'll come up much later than whatever they say, but at least you can get a ballpark. And so that'll be in the show notes. The Gemini full moon from Tucson, Arizona at 2:16 a.m. This is what it's going to look like here and a lot of the places. And you can also see here's the June solstice point, the 0 Cancer, where the sun rises on the June solstice on the galactic cross. And we're going to talk about that a bit more in a moment. And so from the Pleiades to the tips of the horns of the bull, all cover the seasonal sign of Gemini. And I've talked about this before, that the seasonal signs are not the same as the constellations, because the bull is also known as Taurus, but it's not the season of Taurus. It is the season of Gemini currently. And I'll show more about that in a moment. But first, let's just go take a little bit deeper dive into the out of bounds energies, because when the moon, or any planet for that matter, goes beyond the boundaries of the sun, it can act like a wild card, meaning that whatever you think might happen might not happen, or whatever you think, like unexpected things come along, and it disrupts what is known, expanding possibilities in extraordinary ways. So this happens when the moon or another planet is in Gemini and Cancer, or Sagittarius and Capricorn. Sometimes it can be in other signs, like the beginning or end of other signs, but it's primarily in these signs where this happens. So Mercury will be outside the boundaries of the sun from November 14th to December 14th. So clearly at this time of the full moon on November 27th, Mercury is out of bounds. Mars is going out of bounds December 20th to January 23rd. So Venus won't be out of bounds until well into 2024. But the Sagittarius new moon on December 12th is also going to be more extremely out of bounds than this full moon. Very fascinating. So the sun rises due east and due west at the equinox points when it's at 0 Aries or 0 Libra, depending on which equinox. Then it goes all the way up to 0 or 23.5 degrees north of east, and then 23.5 degrees south of east, or almost 23.5 degrees. And so when planets go outside these boundaries, we have an out of bounds moon. Now, if you want to calculate your out of bounds planets, I will put this also in the show notes so that you can do that. And it's remarkable to get a sense of if you have out of bounds planets. For example, I have Mars in Capricorn, and it's outside the boundaries. So it doesn't act like a typical Mars in Capricorn. Anyway, we also want to talk about Sedna, because Sedna is a dwarf planet that was discovered in 2003, and she has an over 11,000 year orbit. So this is in a very elliptical orbit. So she goes way out into the deep reaches of our galaxy, and then comes back, and this is about where she is right now. So in Sedna was in Aries from 1867 to 1965. Sedna entered Taurus in 1965. And then on June 15th or 16th, depending on your time zone, Sedna entered Gemini for the first time in almost 11,000 years, or probably in 11,000 years, actually. It's because it's more than 11,000 years for Sedna to make that orbit. In November of 2023, Sedna retrogrades back into Taurus. And so that's been happening. And yet, and then she re-enters Gemini in April of 2024 and will be in Gemini until June 15th, 2066. But that means that Sedna is with the Pleiades, because the Pleiades mark 0 Gemini and 29 Taurus, or 29 Taurus. And anyway, so she's there all this time, and she becomes a feature then of this full moon. And so her story is that she is an Inuit goddess of the deepest, coldest parts of the Arctic Ocean. And she gets basically banished down to the bottom of the ocean, the freezing parts of the ocean. Her story is about the deepest emotions of betrayal, anger, resentment, and rage brought on by treachery. And out of her hands, she births all of the sea creatures. So there's the betrayal, but there's also a birthing that takes place around that. So in the dwarf planet Sedna, she synchronistically goes into the deepest, coldest parts of space in her 11,000-year orbit. Now she's starting to come back and come close to the Earth and to the sun again, and why she was probably just discovered in 2003. So Sedna is helping Earthlings feel and deal with all our frozen emotions that come from the depth of who we are. So with Sedna in Gemini and Taurus, well, also the last degree of Taurus, the opportunity is to feel what we feel, forgive and heal and transform the old creation story of pain and betrayal into a new, more fun and loving creation story. So at this full moon, we could even imagine what is the new story we would tell around Sedna. And she is so important to many, many cultures. I think I'll do a video on this another time, but just so you know, this is something to tune into with this full moon. Now, the full moon at 7 p.m. on November 27th, when the moon is rising, is going to be at 13 degrees Gemini, might be at 12, 13 degrees Gemini as it's coming up over the horizon. So it's past the exact full moon point, well beyond the Pleiades, and it's actually still aligned with Aldebaran. So in this whole full moon time, we have the moon exactly at 5 degrees Gemini when it's its exact fullness. And that means it's within 5 degrees of the Pleiades and within 5 degrees of Aldebaran. The Pleiades are at 0 Gemini, and Aldebaran is at 10 degrees Gemini. And so the ancient alchemists, they would do their biggest ceremonies when a planet was within 6 degrees of a Bohemian, or one of their stars. And the Pleiades and Aldebaran are both magical stars. They're both Bohemian stars. And so this is when they make their elixirs, their potions, their talismans, their intentions, their things that they were doing to create magic, to do the alchemy that they were tuning into. So also the moon is inside the sacred hoop of stars. Oh, and let me just say, if you want to know more about the Bohemian stars, we do have a class with My Star Alchemy that goes into great depth about how to work with these stars. It's so fun and it's so amazing. All right, so the moon on the night of November 30th is exiting the sacred hoop of stars. And we're going to I'll show you a little bit about that in just a moment. But it's also at its most extreme out of bounds point. And you can see here on the 28th, the moon goes out of bounds at 26 degrees. On the 27th, it was 24 degrees. The 29th, it's 27 degrees. On November 30th, it's 28 degrees. December 1st, it's 26. And then December 2nd is coming 24, and it comes back into bounds around the 3rd or 4th of December. So it's out of bounds for quite a while. We have several days of experiencing this out of bounds energy for that really is a big feature of this full moon. And also every Gemini full moon is in the sacred hoop of stars. And the reason I say that is because that the Pleiades up here on the sacred hoop, and I'm trying to show the sacred hoop of stars. It's not perfect, but anyway, it's the 0 degrees Gemini point. So even if the moon is with the Pleiades at a full moon, it's on the edge of the sacred hoop. It's just entering the sacred hoop. And then it goes like the summer solstice point is 0 Cancer. So it really, the Gemini point comes through this whole entire part of the sky where the seasonal sign of Gemini is occurring. And so this full moon is definitely happening within the sacred hoop of stars. And so here's the Pleiades, then it goes to Capella, Castor and Pollux, Procyon, it doesn't make a perfect circle, Sirius, Rigel, and then back to the Pleiades, and that's the sacred hoop. So the Lakota and other native tribes felt it was auspicious and worth noting when planets were passing through this part of the sky. So having a full moon in this part of the sky is definitely worth tuning into. Now, this is showing how the Pleiades are marking the outer edge of the hoop. And again, looks more like a shield, and somehow it looks like my, I don't know how that happened. But anyway, it looks more like a shield than a hoop. This is something I did some years ago and didn't, so it's not that easy to create the hoop with this technology. But the whole point being, from 29 Taurus or 0 Gemini to 23 Cancer, or 23 to 25 Cancer, because Procyon is at about 25 Cancer, but when planets are moving out of the sacred hoop of stars. And again, the June solstice sun rises here when it reaches 0 Cancer, and it's if we look at 1 degree every 72 years, it entered the 1 degree mark in 1926 and it leaves it in 2070, and was exact in 1998. So it's a powerful look at this edge of the galaxy where we're looking out beyond space and time. And I've talked about that before, but just to kind of give you a sense of the magic of this time. So white buffalo calf woman prophecy and black elk prophecy and the sacred hoop is worth just having in our awareness during this full moon. White buffalo calf woman gave the Lakota people the gift of knowledge about the sacred hoop and the sacred pipe, and she taught the people the 7 sacred ways to pray, and she promised one day she would return, and that part of the symbol of that returning was when white buffalo calves would start being born once again. The first recorded white buffalo calf was born in 1933, and at that time there were only 500 buffalo left on the planet. In 1994, Miracle, a white buffalo calf, was born, and now there are about 50 white buffalo calves, or white buffalo, because some of them have grown up, that are out of an estimated 500,000 buffaloes. So the buffalo are making their return, which is awesome to consider. And that on May 16th of 2023 at Bear River State Park in Wyoming, a white buffalo calf was born to a 2-year-old white buffalo mother. And so that lets us know that this prophecy is starting to be fulfilled. Now, black elk, who lived from 1863 to 1950, had a vision of the sacred hoop when he was young. And he saw that the sacred hoop was going to bring all nations, all people back into harmony with each other. It was helping to create a rainbow bridge where all people of all races and all nations and all across the planet would come back together. And he saw that it was going to take 7 generations from the time of the massacre at Wounded Knee that happened in 1890 to heal the wounds and trauma of that time and of that event. And then 7 generations, well, it depends on how you count generations, but 2040, if you use 20 years for each generation, would be the first possible time, or maybe 2050 if you use like a 25-year range. But if you use a different year range, it could be a different date. It's just, but we could say that what we know is that this full moon is drawing our attention to these prophecies, and how are we bringing them back? How are we bringing our awareness into how to create a place of peace and plenty for all people in the world, that we can use these times, we can use these energies to do that. So just a quick reminder that, and I think I've already shared this, that the season of Gemini overlays the constellation of the bull. Here's the bull's horns, here's the eye of the bull, Aldebaran, and then the I think it's up on the shoulder of the bull where the Pleiades are. So but it's all being represented by Gemini and the season of Gemini. So the horns of the bull point to the galactic cross near the galactic edge where the June solstice sun currently rises. We saw that already. And if you want to know more about how the seasonal signs are overlaying the constellations, there's a 15-minute, I'll put this in the show notes as well, 15-minute video that I did some years ago on this that speak into it. So some ways of really tuning into the Gemini full moon: cultivate laughter, cultivate that more playful, humorous, fun way of being. Laughter is a natural, innate, and inborn, and it heals. Its healing abilities are our birthright. So we can use laughter to heal. And it's actually been used to heal in so many amazing ways. Infants begin smiling around the first weeks of life and then laughing out loud within the first few months. This is my grandson, who back in 2020 when he was about 5 months old. So, and he just loves to laugh. He loves to have fun. He will say, "I'm having fun." He just loves to have fun. So some practices: smile often. It's contagious. When you smile at yourself in the mirror, you smile at those you know, you smile those you encounter that you don't know, smiling for no reason. Smiling, I've noticed this, it's like it just uplifts your energy. Smiling is joyous, contagious, and often leads to laughter. So you want to find a reason to laugh. It may not add years to your life, but it surely adds life to your years. The author of that quote is unknown, but it's so true. The more we can laugh, the more we can play, the better. The more we can experience the joy of life. So if you need some ways to activate that, watch a funny movie or a TV show, read or tell a funny story, listen to a comedian, read funny memes, kind, playful banter with friends. That can definitely create laughter. And here's Swami Beyondananda. He says, "It's true that the unexamined life is not worth living, and equally true that the unlived life is not worth examining." And the unlived life is probably a life that doesn't have much fun or humor in it. And the first part of the quote, "It's true that the unexamined life is not worth living," comes from Socrates. He said that. And then Swami Vivekananda, in his Gemini fashion, added to that and said, yeah, it's equally true that the unlived life is not worth examining. So also, you might want to listen to this song. It's a fun song you can listen to on YouTube. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And this is a song that was written by Russ Ballard, and then America recorded it in 1982, and it was a number 8 on the top 40 list for 5 weeks. And it's a really fun song. You can do magic. You can have anything you desire, magic, and you're the one who can put out the fire. You know darn well when you cast your spell, you will get your way. When you hypnotize with your eyes, a heart of stone can turn to clay. And this song is a fun one to sing, to intend, and to remind yourself that you can do magic, and that this is what this full moon is all about, is doing magic. So you'll see in the show notes additional links or articles and videos that I've already mentioned. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, because, and then also click the notification bell so you can know when I'm posting a new video. And also, for more on the zodiacal constellations and how the seasonal signs are moving through them, the magical Bohemian stars, where this new moon is sitting right between 2 of them, and the stellar gateways, you can go to mystaralchemy.com to find out more about that. And hopefully we all have the opportunity to experience a magical, fun, playful new moon, full moon, Gemini full moon on November 27.